Now, we have with us Mr. G.K. Mittal, is a co-chairman of Association National Council on Indirect Taxes and very eminent advocate. So today's topic will be that will be covered by him are enforcement proceedings under GST, scope and how to handle, and input tax credit for furtherance of businesses, which is not a reality. So I would like to read out a brief profile of Mr. Mittal. Mr. J.K. Mittal is a co-chairman of National Council on Indirect Taxes (SOCM). He is a law graduate from Delhi University and is a practicing advocate, particularly in indirect tax in High Court and Supreme Court. Mr. Mittal is a member of Supreme Court Bar Association and Delhi High Court Bar Association. He is a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India and fellow member of ICSI. Mr. Mittal authored India's most popular book on service tax, Law, Practice and Procedure of Service Tax, that was published up to 33rd edition. He has authored the first book of GST in India, Introduction to GST, which was released on 4th of March 2015, covering GST development in India from 2006 to 15, focusing on the key issues under GST from the industry perspective. The Supreme Court Bar Association has honored Mr. J.K. Mittal for 9 consecutive years from 2006 to 14 and also in year 2016 to 18 on the occasion of Law Day. So now without wasting any more time, I would like to request Shri J.K. Mittal to start the session. And I would request all the other attendees to please keep yourself muted. And during the question answers, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mittal.
Good morning to all of you. Thanks, Mr. Avinash. At the beginning, I would like to say, stay at home, stay safe. COVID-19 pandemic has changed the entire thinking process and how we are meeting now through webinars. We have to change our entire thinking. And our topic has nicely been chosen by the SHM today, the taxing time of GST law under COVID-19. And under which we will see the two different topics and how the government should behave, how the assessee should behave, and how we should deal with such a situation. I believe that the GST law has a impact throughout the country, and in this situation when the economy has drastically affected with the COVID-19, the GST is a very passing through a testing time, because any law which is being made by the government is for the benefit of the public, and GST was also made with the same sense by giving a slogan, one nation, one tax, and the good and simple tax. I will not go in detail of what happened in the last 2.5 years or 3 years, but we should see in this time how we should deal with a situation and what the government, how the government should act. And my entire talk will be very practical and pragmatic, and in the beginning itself I will show you the some of the officers who have issued the notice in this during lockdown period to the assessee, and how and try to prove that why a GST law has become it is a testing time for the GST law. Let's begin with the two topics which we have chosen today: enforcement proceeding in GST, scope and how to handle, and the second is the input tax credit in furtherance of the business, not a reality. Why we have chosen these two topics and how it is correlated with the testing time of the GST law in the COVID-19. Because if you have seen, I'm just giving the couple of examples. Any law which is made, in our country, the success of that law lies on how it is being implemented. If the purpose for which if the law is made, if we deviate from that purpose, it's very difficult for the success of law. And because your voice is
I guess it's a full no, it's not it's about
I would request all the other attendees to please keep yourself muted.
Okay.
Therefore, why we have chosen these two topics. Enforcement proceeding in any law is very important facet.
Okay. And how much
In
time is
the
time?
two angles. One is so that those who are not following the law, against them, if that enforcement proceeding is started,
So generally, I don't.
then there would be fear of that
So
law,
I am a believer that
and law would be implemented, and it will achieve the very purpose of the way.
when they are
And
experienced
with
person,
it,
milk is going to show up in the league.
enforcement
So
proceeding.
I'm not a big fan of that too.
Sorry, I'm
But
getting lot of
going to
disturbance.
one game and then
I ask Avinash, you kindly
so
see
I think when I
whose
started
discussion is coming up in the background.
it's only that purpose, but
Avinash,
then also
kindly
I
see
think
Separate
what
messages.
voice is
should
coming
be a
in.
part of my knowledge is not good.
You please mute everybody, otherwise there
Yes,
will be a
yes,
lot of
yes,
disturbance.
yes, yes. I'm asking IT team to please mute everyone.
Uh,
Yes, friends, just talking about why the enforcement proceeding become important, because one part I already told you that if it is being used for the purpose to achieve the very object of the act for which it was made, nobody will object. But
hmm.
otherwise, if the enforcement proceedings are being used in such a manner which become in the
Okay.
eyes of the taxpayer as a tool of harassment in the hands of the tax
Okay.
collector,
Right.
then it
Get that.
become very burdensome. And what exactly we are going to discuss, why we are saying the testing time of GST. Once we are passing through a very bad phase of economy, and the economy is very down, and probably next couple of years is going to be very tough. In such a situation, I feel that
Okay.
there
Okay.
should be
So
more
this
hand
time,
holding from the government
right.
side.
So this time, I
Once
also
the,
do
once
also
the
in
officer will use these tools
so I don't need any
selectively
suits this time because
and very strongly whenever
so and
required,
also
then
I'm
it
done with
will pass through a very good time. However, we are going to
so at
see,
the end yeah so these two
let's
particularly
see the some of the
came
recent
out of the
notice
this
which have
उसको
been
सारा
issued. Before that, I just would like to read a quote from
उसको थोड़ी
Mahatma
ना
Gandhi.
इसको discuss
You must not worry
okay
whether the desire
and
resides
must
in
I
your
so I
products
added
or
mustard
not.
sauce to it a little bit
So long as your motive is pure,
so
your
veggies
means correct. Therefore, our entire discussion will be based
okay
on that.
okay so I mean so
We will
I'm
try
still probably
our
about
best
3 to 4 years away from
to
my target.
highlight those of the
So,
issues
though I want to
which has
achieve
to
an
be taken care
I
of.
don't know what's best
However,
for me.
ultimately, whether we will be able to achieve that end or not, that I am not very sure. Time will tell. But once means is correct and motive is pure,
So I
voice is
target
being heard,
74 to 75
then our
and currently
purpose is going to be served.
yeah at least
Let's see
75
some of my
74
client
yeah 3
in
to
the
4
last 1 week only has sent me the notice as latest as yesterday itself. I have deliberately smoothed the name of those clients because intention is not to highlight those things. Intention is to discuss the very topic for which today's discussion is being take place. It is the 16th of June 2020. This letter has been issued by the DGCI, and what were they are talking about, the non-payment of service tax for the financial year 2014-15, and now we are in 2020 June. No section has been quoted in this letter, no purpose, just somebody picked up a pen and pencil and sent a letter. We will discuss it. DIN number is very clearly mentioned. We will discuss that part also. I want to just highlight first, before coming to the topic, why this topic become important. SOCHM chose this topic a month before, but before this webinar could have been started, many such kind of notices letter have started trickling in the last 3-4 days. which my client has also informed me. These are some of the issues. I'm sure it would be in thousands and lakhs throughout the country. You see the second one. This is the letter or the summon issued on 4th June 2020 and received on 11th June 2020. And you see kind of this letter, they are making inquiry under which section, why they are making inquiry, everything absent. To my mind, the officer feel that as the lockdown is, opening, they have been asked to come to the office, pick up pen and pencil, take all the name of the assessee and start sending indiscriminately letters, summon, etc. Therefore, what has not changed and what has changed? The departmental officer mindset probably has not changed even an inch. What has changed? Economy has come down drastically. I have seen yesterday somebody shared with the data advance tax, which is in corporate almost 80% down, non-corporate almost 70% down. Therefore, in such a situation, when the people are not able to run their businesses, if the officer is going to feel if they can issue indiscriminate notice, summons, etc., then it is going to further add on the pain of the assessee and the taxpayers. And what these are reflecting, how these powers are going to be used. You see the third instance, it is the 6th March 2020, just before a lockdown, this kind of inquiry letter was issued. And in this inquiry letter, if you read it, we will share with this presentation to all the attendees. They said, you are exporting your services, and officer is of the view that service provided by them do not qualify export of services. They already decided. Why? Because they have the power to send these letters. And similarly, the summon has also been issued, and this summon quoting the DIN number, but this letter has no DIN number. These are the two different officers you see. This is the additional director from the same very office, whereas the superintendent, the senior intelligence officer, while issuing the summon, issued the DIN. This is for the same very party. How they are issuing all these things. Therefore, we have to see these summons letters are trickling down, and these are not the only few one. There many one, and one more, was there. If I from the Calcutta also, one of my client informed me, and immediately after the webinar we have to reply to that. It is missed out in this screen. Then how these are being issued? Let's discuss what is the DGCI, which is now known as GSTI or DGCI. Therefore, after the introduction of the GST, name of the department, DGCI has changed, and it become the Director General of GST, Intelligence, or they are calling as DGCI. But their conduct, whether changed or not, that is very important factor. And how they are working and how they should work. What I understand, for their manual which they issued long back as a DGCI, that DGCI only act when there is specific information of the tax evasion. But as such, in reality, they are making roving inquiry instead of acting while there is a specific information of the evasion of the taxes. And that is the cause of concern. Instead of when they have the specific information. In fact, one of the judgment Delhi High Court delivered in 2016, 1st November, in the ebis.com versus Union of India, where the DGCI raided the premises of the businessman and arrested the CMD. What was unearthed? That the DGCI did not even contact to the jurisdictional officers to ascertain the very fact about that assessee, where the jurisdictional officers already made assessment and verify entire records. And what exactly is happening in these cases also, I will just turn to you once again. These are the letters, etc. has been issued. You see, this is the DGCI letter issued yesterday to one of the India's largest company, and in which they have referred the non-payment of service tax for 2014-15. If 2014-15, a person would not have paid the tax, what was the jurisdictional officer doing? I know this assessee. I am dealing with them for the last more than a decade. In fact, the DGCI officers thought it to issue this without probably even verifying the fact from the jurisdictional officers. Jurisdictional officers has already verified the entire records for that period. Therefore, why we call it as a testing time? These officers, which is heading a department, are indiscriminately issuing notices and summons to the various companies, making grave allegations like this: non-payment of service tax, non-payment of GST, you are not covered under the export of service under GST, without going through the process for which they are meant for. You see that for GST also, this is the GST department from Indore. They issued this summons and asking the details like this. And you see the detail of the service provided against the GST, even though they are writing in the beginning itself, making inquiry in connection with the exemption claimed on the services provided to the foreign clients under the export of service under GST. Similarly, the additional commissioner, Mr. Ranjit Kumar, also issued this, and they are making a grave allegation in that. The question is that why the jurisdictional officers have not been contacted before issuing this summons, letters, etc., and whether it is a wronging inquiry or not. If you see very carefully these letters, summons, etc., you will find perfectly that they are making wronging inquiry, because there has to be inquiry under the particular provision of the law. Let's begin with some of the very important discussion. This is one of the very, very important section so far as the officers are concerned. And this is one of the section for the taxpayer which is causing lot of harassment. This is the section 70 under the GST law, which empowered the GST officer to issue summons. Once they have the power to issue summons, why it is become a testing time? Because this power of issuing summons is not the first time in any law. It has been there in the central excise law. It was there in the service tax law. It has been there in the other laws also, whether other taxation law or whether the criminal law or the civil law. The question is that how it is to be exercised and when it is to be exercised and whether that law is being followed. Therefore, what we can say, why we call it as a testing time, if the officer, instead of following the law in letter of spirit and mechanically start using their power, just indiscriminately sending this summons, then it is going to be a very tough time. Because when the courts are closed, only very urgent hearing take place in the courts. Mostly people are working from home and not entire economy is working. If such kind of indiscriminate letter comes, taxpayer will not be able to get justice. They will not be even able to get the proper legal consultancy, and in such a time it will be very difficult even to run business. We will read this section little later. First, I want to read some of the points. What are the essential when a summon can be issued? If we understand it, and if it is not being followed, then it will be very tough time. First thing is that any provision of the law of such purported inquiry. Why I am so? if you see the manner in which they issue the summon, you read this summon, very first line, they always will state in a standard line, so and so officer is making an inquiry. Okay, well and good. If you are making an inquiry, you make an inquiry. But is it not necessary for the officers to write down under which section he is making an inquiry? Because unless the provision of the law is quoted, how a assessee or the taxpayer will come to know whether it is a valid inquiry or not? Therefore, second things we have to see the competency of said officers to make an inquiry. Here, whether a superintendent, whether an assistant commissioner, whether additional commissioner, they will use standard line without quoting any provision of the law under which they are making an inquiry. And here it is very important. Section 70 is only a procedural law. Section 70 only empower them to issue a summon. But Section 70 is not an ignition point of making inquiry. That means by taking cover of Section 70, you cannot commence and start inquiry. If you read the GST law very carefully, GST law has empowered the officers to make scrutiny of the return, to conduct audit, to conduct inspection, search, etc. So many things. Therefore, under those provisions, they have the power, and those very officers have to exercise the power. There are certain safeguards have been mentioned under those provisions also. If those safeguard is not taken care of, and you do not state in the summon or in the letter which you are issuing to the taxpayers under which provision of the law inquiry is being made, then entire purpose of this will be taken as a very doubtful manner by the taxpayers. Because a machinery provision in any law cannot be used as a tool to conduct an inquiry. Take the example in a civil case or in a criminal case. In civil case, what happened? X person filed a case against the Y, let's say for the recovery of the amount which is due, which Y is not paying to the X. It is not like that as soon as you filed a case, the court will issue a summon. Once you filed a case, the court will examine that case and prima facie find that it is a fit. Then only the summon process shall be issued. And while issuing the summon, the court will append the entire civil suit petitions or the summary of that you are required to come before the court to explain your conduct because of this allegation. Therefore, the 2-3 things are very clear, and these are clear in the criminal law also. Once you filed a case, it's not the summons are being issued. First, you are being examined by the magistrate, and you have to satisfy in the pre-summoning stage. And if you satisfy, the case is made out, only then the summons are being issued. Therefore, what the point I am highlighting, summon process is only a procedural law. Summon provisions are not a substantive law empowering power to conduct an inquiry or investigation. Therefore, these are a very important facet we have to keep in mind. One of the judgment, J. Sekhar, very important judgment under the PMLA law, one para 72 of that judgment of Delhi High Court. I'm just quoting only one sentence which is very, very important. More importantly, it cannot be mechanically reproduction of the words of the statute. What happened in our country, officer exercising the power, whether conducting search, inspection, issuing summons, he reproduced the section as it is. That means there was no application of mind at all. And we will read the section also, how and why the summon can be issued by the officers, not like manner in which they are issuing. And this is also important judgment. Thereafter, we will read these provisions, why these are being misused even in the COVID-19 periods when the entire economy is suffering. The Supreme Court said in this judgment of 1989, on sufficient cause being shown, if these words are appearing in the section, that has to be interpreted. And what envisages the objective consideration of the case. Therefore, when on the sufficient cause being shown only, you have to act. You have to show in your letter, you have to show in your summons that there was an application of mine before these notices or the summons are being issued. But unfortunately, it is not happening even in this COVID-19 period. Let's read now. The section is very small. Only 3 lines we will read. And what are the important facets of it? The proper officer under this act shall have a power to summon any person. Therefore, those who are the proper officers, like the senior intelligence officer or the superintendent level officers, those who have been appointed under these provisions, they have the power to summon any person. If we read that sentence, does it mean they can call anybody in their office out of 130 crores people of this country? Answer is certainly no. This power does not mean you can use it mechanically and you can abuse the power. What further has been used, only those person he should have issued someone whose attendance he consider necessary. Therefore, these words are very important. When he consider necessary, he should issue the summons when the material facts are before him and he have examined those facts, and after analyzing those facts, he has reached as a conclusion that the presence of that particular person is very necessary, then only he should issue a summon. Second part of that, the summon only can be issued for two purposes, and how it is being misused we will discuss, either to give evidence or to produce a document or other things. Therefore, either you can ask a person to come before him to record his statement, and we will discuss in the statement what questions are being asked and what could have been asked. Certain question can never be asked in the while recording a statement, and we have experience in the last 2 decades that then these summons have become a tool of harassment, the kind of questions they are putting it. And the second thing is that he can ask the documents, but instead of asking a documents, the officers while issuing the summons, what kind of information is asking? Document has a different connotation. You can read the General Clauses Act. Document, in the simplicity words, one can interpret that document is a piece of a document which exists. Document does not mean you have the power to give a direction to the assessee to create a document or you chalk out certain information in a certain fashion. Documents means the information already available on the records. That records can be directed to be produced, not the certain kind of information to create that record. The third thing is very, very important facet. The summon only can be issued in any inquiry. That means you can conclude that someone must be preceded by an inquiry. The inquiry first exists, and if that inquiry, the officers find certain documents, certain things, and then he consider necessary a summons should be issued to a particular officer of a person in a company, then he is competent to issue it. But it is not happening at the ground level. Therefore, these three facets are very important. If the inquiry has to be exist before issuing a summon, then in the summon, that officer is duty bound to quote that provision under which he is conducting an inquiry, and he must also state whether the inquiry is being against that person to whom the summon is issued, or inquiry is against the other company, and in that company certain document he has found, and to corroborate that or to complete that investigation, he needs certain information, certain statement he has to record from a person, then he is calling. Let's say XYZ company is being inquired by a GST officers, and in that inquiry he found that PY in another person has purchased or certain transaction he has indulged, and he find that while the inquiry is being conducted against XYZ company, he need a presence of third party, then the summons should very categorically. Why I'm saying so? If you read the subsection 2, of section 70. It clearly states subsection 1, it clearly states the entire provision of the CPC shall be applicable in the same manner in the CPC that summons are being issued. If you read the Code of Civil Procedure, while summons are being issued by the court has to annex that the civil suit or the summary of the civil suit. Why so? Because otherwise the person you have summoned, how he will able to respond? Someone cannot be in dark. If you are calling a person, he has to give answer to your query. You have to inform him very clearly what kind of that inquiry is, against whom the inquiry is, so that he is prepared and answered those questions also. If you call someone and you don't inform him the purpose of conducting that inquiry, then how this procedure stated in the Code of Civil Procedure will be followed, whereas this section clearly states the same manner it has to be followed as in the CPC. Now you have to see the other point related to that these kind of the behavior we have seen, the GST officers or the earlier service tax officer or the central excise officer were behaving with the taxpayers, and it appears that there is no change in their stand and mindset, though entire country is changing in this lockdown period of COVID-19. Whether the officer while recording the statement can ask any question of law or interpretation of the law or the agreement. My answer is that he cannot any such question at all. And I will again take you back to those summons, those letters which the DGCI officer are issuing under the GST law. Whether by issuing summons can an officer ask to give a legal grounds? Summons are being issued under the GST law. Why this is an export of service? Why it is no? What is that cannot be asked while a summons are being issued. Summons can be issued only for the purpose of to know the factual facts. What interpretation, what inference will be drawn because of that kind of information collected by the officer, that the officer has to do it. He cannot put that burden on the assessee before even issuing the so-called notice. In fact, very old judgment of the Constitution Bench in the Kolkata Discount Company, the Supreme Court held that under the income tax law, the duty of the taxpayer is only to reflect the facts and to give the books of accounts. What inference they will draw, what inference the officer will draw from that books of accounts and the fact, that is his outlook. He should not expect the assessee will assist him to drawing this inference in any manner. Therefore, the officer cannot put to the assessee while issuing the summon what are the legal ground, what is the interpretation of the law. These things cannot be put. Similarly, while issuing the summons or letter, only documents can be sought, not the details. If you will see these summons, they will ask you to prepare details, and as soon as they direct you to prepare the details, that means they are asking you to create a document. After creating a document, you cannot seek that document. Document exists only can be sought, not a given directions. In fact, in ebis.com, these things happen, and fortunately, I led that case before Delhi High Court, which is now upheld by the Supreme Court also. In this case also, someone was issued Is it okay now? Some message came and I have accepted that. I hope everybody can view the screen.
Yes, sir. Screen is there.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. In ebis.com judgments, when the assessee was asked to prepare a detail in a particular format prepared and designed by the DGCI, which is now the Director General of GST Intelligence, the simple question was put by the High Court to the Learned Counsel appear for the DGCI, under which law you can direct to create a documents. You only can ask a document which exists and in possession of the assessee. If a document is not exist and not in the possession of the assessee, do you have any power to give such kind of direction? And the answer was no, such provision was there, and the High Court refused to accept and exceed the demand of the DGCI, and ultimately judgment came in the favor of the assessee. Now I will take you back, and again you have to see those documents which have been issued. Now see, this summons is issued on 6th March 2020 under GST. Summons says following detail may be furnished. Detail of the service provided and service against which GST were being paid otherwise, and detail of the amount collected in respect of export of service shown in the GST 3B return. And that is very important. Ground for claiming these services as export of service. That is very important. And you should be very careful as a taxpayer. He has no right to ask while issuing a summon, what are the legal ground under which you are claiming export of service? You are claiming export of service. If it is not an export of service, he has to issue a notice. He cannot ask before issuing a notice. Nobody can put a cart before a horse. Therefore, what these officers are very clever. They don't follow the law. They probably do not know the law. Summons cannot be issued as a tool, as a so-called notice. It is not a process by which assessee is supposed to reply to their legal submissions. And at the same time, legal submission would be made by their counsel, which the client will appoint. So why such questions are being asked and why these details are being short? Where the detail exists, he should write down this particular document is required. He is not asking a particular documents. Therefore, he is violating section 70 of the GST law while he is asking a legal grounds why the export of service are being made. And you see, now this is the additional commissioner who has issued from the same very DGCI department this letter, and he is also, what he is stating is very important to read it. Only 2 lines. It is learned that this office, you have declared some of their services as export of service in the GST 3B return. This office is of the view that service provided by you do not qualify as export of service. Let's assume his allegation is correct. I filed my 3B return. I claim my service are export of service. If officer find that it is not an export of service, he cannot send me this kind of letter, because the letter title is that inquiry regarding payment of GST. What inquiry is going to do? He has already the entire details. I provided the export of service. He already formed his opinion and the mind that my service does not qualify for export of service. Let's his allegation is correct. Then it is his duty. He have to issue me this notice along with all such evidence so that I can respond to it. But he does not. What he feel like that? Let the call to that assessee and have a bargain with him. I strongly believe such officers should be investigated by the CBI, because if such an allegation is made after going through the GST 3B return and other evidence what he is in possession, which I believe he has no, because I am dealing with these such clients. Because the same very officers have issued in the past to the same very assessee the similar letter under the service tax, where the Delhi High Court interfered and granted entry. What I have seen, a officer working in this department, let's suppose that this officer is working, let's say in Delhi. If he shifted to Mumbai, from there he will issue the notice. Then he shift in Chennai, there he will issue the notice to the same assessee. he feel like that by sitting in any chair, any part of the country, he can exercise the power to the officers, to the taxpayers. In this case, this officer sitting in Indore, he is writing a letter to this SSC based in Delhi and Noida. Why he is exercising the power? Delhi officer and Noida officer is feeling like that the SSC is a good taxpayer, he is rightfully conducting business. But Indore officer feeling that no, he has something. He has a very third eyes and he does not share with his counterpart, the officer in Delhi and in Noida, and is conducting business as officers. You have to think in this kind of period when we are passing through, their mindset has not changed. They are asking all such legal ground. They are quoting all legal provision. In such a situation, if you feel like that, because what they therefore it appears that the supply of service by you, their foreign client may not be treated as export of service. This is nothing but a show cause notice. But the show cause notice without appending any evidence, it has to be rejected. And it has to be also rejected. It does not contain any DIN number also. In fact, this is a fit case where the finance minister, who spoke very categorically when the DIN provision were introduced through a circular, that any letter issued without quoting a DIN number, that is known as void, and you can just throw it out when she was admitted the member of trade and industry. If such senior officers from the department issuing such letters without quoting the DIN, why their conduct should not be examined by the CBIC, Revenue Secretary, and the finance ministers? Because these kind of officers will create the fear. We have already a fear of the coronavirus, and we are not able to conduct our business. And if such officers are allowed to conduct and behave in such a manner, that it will be very difficult for the businessman to survive. You see the other things. Now you see, this is the summon issued, one of the very reputed NGO in this country. And this also state, what is state? Making an inquiry in connection with furnishing of information and asking month-wise detail, etc. Another summon you see, with effect from 2012, service tax was changed with the negative list, and they are asking plethora of information by writing non-payment of tax. Can you issue such kind of letters? That has to be seen. Therefore, unless we will stop this, our pain will increase, and that there would be a testing time for such law. Because I can remember when the Dowry Prohibition Act was started, it was one of the finest law. Similarly, the GST law was the good law. Why this turned out to be the bad law? Why the Supreme Court say the Dowry Prohibition Act is now tool for harassment, and the people just to make money use and file frivolous complaints, frivolous litigations are being started. Therefore, GST law turned out to be the bad law, not because it is a bad law, if the intent was very good. Even the Ministry of Finance had taken large number of steps to make this law very successful after getting feedback. And even the COVID-19 period, many relaxation has been given. And they may not be enough, then the government is still working. But the implementation of that law will be very, very important. And that's why the pain. Let me take to only the judgment at the last slide, only the very recent judgment, because I have skipped the many slides, I will come back to those slides. Because what the Delhi High Court said, this case, which I succeed on 10th June, how the Delhi High Court write, Delhi High Court in their judgment write, the GST department indulged in frivolous litigation, and GST department has been burdened with a cost of rupees 25,000 and directed to refund the amount of 2.38 crores with interest by 15th July. If the High Court observation is such a strong observation, the GST department indulged in the frivolous litigations, what could be the state of affair you can see? And it is not like everybody go to the court. The court only few people go. And out of those cases, if such a strong observation comes, then that's why we have chosen these topics, this is a testing time of GST. Unless the Ministry of Finance officers at the senior level, unless the Revenue Secretary examine those officers, their conduct, and they are put on such a scanner, our GST law can create a lot of pain along with the COVID virus. Therefore, it is utmost duty for the government to ensure their officers should behave in a rightful manner. We at the SOCHM is not against the summons should not be issued, or we are not against the raid should not be conducted. What is that? Before conducting a raid, their conduct also should be examined. Past history of the assessee and past history of the officers, those who are indulging in such kind of litigation, should be examined. Because Delhi High Court in ebis.com also verified that the DGCI officer did not even contact with the jurisdictional officers. And they came to the conclusion in ebis.com that the search was fake, frivolous, even the arrest was frivolous and violation of the law. And a cost of rupees 1 lakh was also imposed in the ebis.com judgment by Delhi High Court on DGCA officers. That has now been paid after the Supreme Court fight was also lost by the government. Therefore, we have to see this is a very important Supreme Court decision I found, and which I usually use for the purpose of our clients. The Supreme Court said in this judgment, and if that is being followed by the officers, then there would be a great relief. The public functionary should be duty conscious rather than the power charged. In para 15 of that judgment, it was recorded that an action is malified, and if it is contrary to the purpose for which it was authorized to be exercised. Dishonesty in discharging of duty vitiate the action without anything more. An action is bad even without proof of motive of dishonesty if the authority is found to have acted contrary to the reason. In fact, what is happening, not only in the GST law, in entire country, in every law, the officers are not duty conscious. They become power charged. And that's why in the last 1 week, number of my clients has contacted from Karnataka, from Kolkata, from Delhi, from other part of the country, that the summons are being issued, notices are being issued. I do not know what is the mind of the officers, whether they are run out of the business or whether they have, like the one saying the idle man is a devil house, or they have no work, because of that they are creating the problem. That has to be examined before, because in SOCHM I can remember when the lockdown 1 was started, we had the meeting of our ease of doing business committee, and we have strongly recommended and suggested that then no notice should be issued, no summons should be issued unless until it is approved at the highest level and after examining all the facts, because unless this is being examined and this practice is not being stopped, the assessee would be in great difficulty. Now we should also examine the another facet. Why the GST law as compared to the income tax law, once we compare, why the GST law or the indirect tax law has a more problem. Problem is that in the GST law also we have the self-assessment like we had in the service tax or in central excise. And we have the self-assessment, first time it was started in the income tax law. Only difference is that the income tax law, once we have a self-assessment, hardly 3-4% assessees are being examined. They are chosen for the scrutiny. Rest are believed to be filing their income tax return truthfully. Whether it is truth or not, but that is the facet of the self-assessment. That is the basic principle of the self-assessment tax, because unless you rely upon the assessee, you can't introduce the provision of the self-assessment. If you rely upon the self-assessment, then you cannot examine each and every assessee. You have to pick up only 3-4%, 5% assessee. Particularly in the GST law, once we have introduced the e-based tax, once we have started the e-way bill system, in those cases, if the assessees are being examined routinely, then there is something wrong with the officers or something wrong with the thinking of the officers and lawmakers, because these two things cannot go hand in hand. we will discuss, couple of things, how the system is going worst. First, we should discuss the DIN. Very important steps was taken. Earlier, it was started under the income tax, and very soon thereafter, after a couple of months, it was started in the indirect tax also. The Ministry of Finance issued this circular stating that any documents, whether through emails or otherwise, are issued to the taxpayers by the officers. It must contain a document identification number. If document identification number is not there, then it will be treated as null and void documents. It need not to be replied. And in fact, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Custom has issued a facilities on their website to verify that DIN number, whether it is valid or not. It has so many shortcomings. I have personally examined only yesterday in 3-4 summons which has been issued, or the letter notices in the last 3-4 days. What are the shortcomings? What are the observations? You just see this slide. Verification of the DIN on the CBIC site only providing which department has issued. It does not state. It states the headline, the name of the officer who has issued, but result is being shown not the name of the officer. It shows DGCI Meerut, DGCI Dehradun, DGCI Delhi. Therefore, it does not match with what they are showing in the heading. It is not the name of the officer, it is the name of the department. Second thing is that it does not ensure that the same DIN number is being used by the same very officers for multiple times for the various assessee also. Because on the website we will type the DIN number, result will be shown as that, yes, it was issued on such and such date by such and such department. If the same date it has been issued to the, let's say, the 20 different assessee with the same DIN number, how it will be verified? Therefore, the system should be strengthened to ensure the taxpayer should know this DIN number has been issued by the name of the officers, by specifying name and designation of that officer, as well as the name of the assessee to whom, for whom this DIN number is generated, so that it can match. Otherwise, let's say with the same DIN number, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, these 6 people have received the summons. Now each one will be seeing on the website that, yes, this is the DIN number, so and so department is issued. But the DIN number is same. All 6 assessee will not come together to know whether DIN number is same or not. Therefore, how to ensure it? Therefore, DIN number has not stopped mechanical issuance of summons and the letters. It served no purpose to reduce the harassment. It appears that when this DIN number facility was started to ensure that no unnecessary harassment take place against the taxpayers, and the officers will be mindful while issuing these summons and the letters, but probably they felt that DIN number is nothing but just printing some of the number. It has not deterred them to use their powers mechanically and to harass the taxpayers. Therefore, it is not serving any purpose. I am taking again back to you, ensure that repeatedly I am taking those slides for issuing summons, etc., to make you should know it, what exactly is happening. In this case, the DIN number is there, but then that is issued by the DGCI or the DGCI Bhopal, Senior Intelligence Officer, on 6th March 2020. On the same very day, 6th March 2020, you see Ranjit Kumar, Additional Director, has also issued this letter from the same very office, the Bhopal DGCI, but there is no DIN number is there in this. Therefore, the 2 different rank of the same department officers. Let's, how one is issuing with the DIN, one is not issuing the DIN. And they are not probably coordinating. But why we can say they are coordinating or not coordinating? In this letter, they said that the summons is being enclosed. If you see the para 4 at the bottom, the last line, accordingly, please find enclosed here with the summon. Now the question arises, if a one DIN number is being generated and issued by the superintendent or the senior intelligence officer, then that summon can be attached by the additional commissioner or the additional director and a letter can be issued? My answer will be no, because each officer has to generate his own, because own DIN number, so that it can be ensured. I find there is a total flaw. These are being misused, and one has to check it. Therefore, it will be a very testing time unless until GST law, once it is become a e-tax and we behave like a e-tax only, officers should reduce, issuing summons letters unless there is a solid case before him. It will not serve any purpose at all. Let's see the power of the search and inspections. It's very interesting to see it, and how this is being misused. I will show you the one of the judgments, and I'm trying to find out one of the letter also. Once very recently, this inspection related one letter is issued, and I'm trying to reflect it you before you, and just give me a minute, because this power of 67, I will show you the two things, then how it is being misused, so that we can understand this is being like used by the officer as a tool to show that they can use the inspection power. And let me share the screen with you, so that if I can, this is missed. I'm reading it, and later will share with you in this. DGCI Kolkata has issued on 12th June 2020 to one of the very big company this letter, stating that visit to your premises, we are under inspection authorization, and they are asking the number of details. Now the question arises, they came for the inspection and issued this letter. What exactly the law is there? The law for the inspection and the search and seizure is section 67. Only difference is that the inspection, you can't have a search and seizure, but after inspection, you can convert it into the search and seizure. What exactly that? No inspection and no search and seizure could take place unless the officer has reason to believe. Now you see the why we are saying these are not being properly. You see these judgments. This is for the Gujarat High Court. What happened under GST law? You see the bottom line first. When this case came up before the division bench of the Gujarat High Court, Gujarat High Court was stunned. Inquiry they ordered to be conducted by the assistant commissioner. That was not satisfied. Then they asked the chief commissioner to conduct an inquiry. And to my shocking, the bench write in the judgments that the chief commissioner even reproduced what stated by the assistant commissioner. And it is, they write in the judgment in para 20, it is a matter of deep regret. The chief commissioner of state tax has attempted to justify the wrongful action of the officer of the department. And what happened in this case? They came for a search in the house of someone. That person was not there. Then the 3 officers and 1 policeman stayed in that house for 8 days. They slept there. Despite that, there was many ladies and young women in that house. And the High Court was quite shocked to hear this, under which provision of the law they could have stayed. And they restricted, they made the like a house arrest. They were monitoring the movement of the people living in that house. The High Court came to the conclusion there is no such power at all. And if you read the entire things, it was quite shocking. Therefore, the GST officers, even if behave in such a manner, they go scot-free, because the officer sitting in the Ministry of Finance, either in the State Department or in the Ministry of Finance in the Union of India, unless will taken into task such officers, and these officers are going to be punished, the law implementation would be very poor in this country. Therefore, if we see the second facet of that, they came for the search and seizure. The section 100 of the CRPC will also apply to the search and seizure. What exactly is happening? And I came to know that, while the Calcutta, they came for the inspection, they threatened they will even conduct the search also. Now the question arises, they conduct a search. The certain provision the law has made. What the law says that if you conduct a search and seizure, certain procedure has to be followed. What is stated under the this section 100 of the CRPC? It says you have to have a two independent independent witnesses while the search is being conducted. What independent means? A reputed people from the locality where the search are being conducted. But friends, what in practice is happening? These officers go in a car and their driver, peon, etc. from their own office or from somewhere else, they picked up from one city and they take it and they become a punch. Why they do so? Why they violate the law? Why these officers are not being taken to task? Because the law has made this procedure so that a search and seizure is conducted. It has to be conducted in a very fair manner. Because if something is not done in the fair and the purpose which is being made, Mahesh Chandra judgment I already read of the Supreme Court, then entire action is vitiated. Anything is to be done in a manner in which prescribed in the law, that is only approved in the law. If it is not done in the same manner, that will not be approved. The second thing which they missed out, these officers, it has to be the search and seizure. Seizure means it has to be item, documents, computers, pen drives, or whatever, mobile phones, if they picked up, it has to be sealed. But what I have seen, my experience in my life, they don't seal any documents. They don't seal any documents or any other things. They just take it away. To my mind, to the best of my knowledge, they are destroying their own evidence, and that cannot be used as an evidence, because if it is not sealed, then the officer can manipulate those things. How you will ensure it? And that's why the one of the judgment in the GST time, which I found in the the Rajasthan High Court in Savaya Suites, the document of the properties, original deed of the properties, they took away in large number of properties. Once we filed the petition, the court directed that all these original document has to be returned and order for the inquiry to be conducted by the Union of India against those DCCI officers. Why the original document was taken away without sealing? And they write in the Panchnama all photocopies. When the case filed, then they accepted large number of documents were original documents. And then court directed them to return to the SSC immediately. Therefore, this is very important aspects when the law is being made for a certain purpose, whether that has been used or properly or not. Let's discuss how it is happening under the GST law when the arrest provisions are being used. These are the certain things we want to discuss it here. There are grave allegations are being made against the people, those who are being arrested. And these allegations are like that. There is a fake invoices, bogus invoices, and they ask denial of credit. Let's see how this is functioning. First, they said it is a fake invoice. How it is? What exactly is the fake invoice? If suppose I issue an invoice to someone, my signature is there on that, can it be called as a fake invoice? In my view, no. With a fake invoice, to my view, only when I create an invoice name of somebody else, I put signature of somebody else, that is called the fake invoice. Why they call it as a fake invoice? They said name mentioned in this invoice or the address mentioned in this invoice, the SSC does not exist at that premises. That cannot be the fake invoice at all. If you today place online orders, certain item comes at your home, you have one invoice with you. How you can ensure whether that SSU has supplied the goods, whether that exists at the address mentioned on that invoice? That is not your outlook as well. Therefore, see in such a situation. Second thing is that they make an allegation that the credit will not be available to you. because they said the condition section 16.2 is exist or not, which we are going to discuss little late. They said on this invoice you can't take a credit. If I can't take a credit, if I have wrongfully taken a credit, you have to issue me a show cause notice under section 73 and 74. And then show cause notice will be adjudicated. But while arresting, they want to put a pressure on the taxpayers. You don't take a credit. This is a fake invoice, etc., etc. Despite that, SSC claiming that he has already made the payment against that invoice. That payment is cleared from his bank account. Such a grave allegation has been made. In fact, the allegations are also being made, which is very interesting to hear, that there was no supply of goods against that invoice. Then the question arises, if there is no supply of goods against the invoices, can you call it as a covered under the GST law at all? If the officer himself is considering that there is no supply, then there is no GST applicable, because GST under section 9 of the CGST Act is applicable only when there is a supply of goods or services or both. Therefore, allegations are contradictory. Another allegation department tried to make and to put the pressure on the SSC. Let's say there is a chain A, B, C, D. They ask all person to pay GST on the entire billed value, and all B, C, D ask not to take credit of the goods purchased by B from A, C from B, D from C. If you don't take a credit and you are going to ask to pay the GST on the entire bill value, is it not against the very concept of the GST? Therefore, the allegation that there is no supply of goods, allegation that despite there is no supply, you are liable to pay tax, allegation that despite collecting the tax, no credit will be available. The entire allegations of the department is quite contradictory to the entire scheme of the GST law. That's why whatever arrest has been made in the last 2-3 years under the GST law, what is my information and the knowledge, in such cases, they put the people behind the bar. After 2-3 months, the people come out from the jail on bail, and no show cause notice are issued, no charge sheet is filed, no complaint is made in the competent court, and the entire things remain same at same stage. Therefore, these things should be clearly spelled out in the law, and the officer should follow in letter and spirit the law, because the Ministry of Finance also see the conduct. The entire GST scheme has changed. Now we have the online system, and if you can't check the online entire things, then why the fake allegations are being made, or allegations, even if the genuine are being made, why the cases are not being taken at the logical conclusions? These are the important judgment one should see, because what I am trying to make a point, because the time is little short, we will proceed little fast. Then once these things are being made, they are issuing for one transaction from A to D, there are multiple transactions they are saying, and in such a case, they are issuing show cause notice, let's say assume, or demanding tax from A, B, C, D, all fours. Is it correct under the law? When the law says, the Supreme Court Govind Saran and Mahatma Agarwal judgments, these judgments clearly spelled out in the taxation law. There are various components at the compartment of the taxation. One of that compartment is that who is liable to pay tax. Therefore, 100 rupees, goods from A to B, B to C, C to D, and D to E, it reaches in the various hands. You can't ask to pay the tax from all 5 persons for the entire bill value, because if all are liable to pay the tax, then you are collecting more than what the law has envisages. You cannot collect the tax. Second thing is that, which is very important, which can help to the many taxpayers, maybe a legal planning, maybe a legal situation when arises, you can take a defense. In certain cases, what happened? Those who are probably indulging in the malpractices, or where the allegations have been wrongfully made, both situations could be. There are certain firm in this judgment, what happened in Delhi, I could find, one was conducting a business as a proprietorship firm. After conducting a business proprietorship firm for a few years, he converted proprietorship firm into the private limited company. Once a private limited company was converted, the officer conducted search and made out a case for a period prior to the date when the proprietorship firm was converted into the private limited company, and issued a so-called notice demanding excise duty from the private limited company. And private limited company won this case because for the period which is prior to conversion of that company, the tax could not have been demanded from the private limited company. It has to be demanded from the person who is liable to pay tax. Because the section 73 and 74 of the GST law, if you read, that law clearly spelled out the so-called notice for demanding tax only can be issued to the person who is chargeable to tax. If a proprietorship firm was chargeable to tax, it cannot be demanded a tax by issuing a so-called notice to the private limited company. So-called notice was to be issued to the proprietorship firm only. Therefore, if such a situation arises, a legal defense will arise and the one can get out of this litigations. Our topic is, this section will prove that why this pain will increase and why it is a testing time. Section 71 in the GST law, probably the most draconian provisions and most going to be abused such provisions. Because why? You read this 3-4 line, this is drafted in such a fashion that any officer can act against any associate any point of time without any reason. Any officer under this act authorized by the proper officer not below the rank of the joint commissioner shall have access to any place of business of a registered person. It says if an officer authorized to any officers, joint commissioner or the above rank, or authorize any officers, they can access the taxpayer premises. And this authorization need not to be given when you have a reason to believe. You can give any point of time. Because we have seen the section 67 for search and inspection. In those cases, authorization only can be given when there is a reason to believe. And reason to believe has been interpreted in this J. Sekhar case, which I did not read earlier. You see, it clearly spelled out, though reason to believe was interpreted in this judgment under the PMLA Act, but the principle is same, whether it is the Income Tax Act, PMLA Act or GST law. It says a reason to believe formed by one officer cannot be a rubber stamp by the other officer also. Every officer who has reason to believe has to apply his mind independently by himself examining the document. And that reason to believe should discernible from what note he is writing in the file, and it should not be mechanically reproduction of the provision of the law. Therefore, if there is a section 71 provision is going to be used against you, then officer can authorize any officers to access your premises, to visit your premises, and he need not to have reason to believe. That is a quite serious, the problem in this section. Another things you see, he can come to your premises for inspection of your books of accounts, documents, computer program, computer software, whether installed in the computer or otherwise, and such other things. In fact, he can come for anything. Such kind of words, even in search and seizure, these things are not there. Section 67, but 71 is quite wider. And then you see it further right, for the purpose of, he will visit for the purpose of verification, inspection and audit, scrutiny, verification, check to safeguard the revenue. It's such a wider term. If section 71 itself is being used, I don't think so there is any provision of the law is required in the GST law. Why you have a such provision? If I can visit to the premises as an officer without reason to believe, without a search warrant, then what is the need of section 67? If I can reach to your premises for verification of all your books of accounts, documents, computer software, everything, even computer software installed otherwise also, anywhere, anything for the purpose of audit, etc., then why we have a such other provisions? Therefore, these provisions in the future is going to be misused, and we at the request at the SHM to the government should be very quite conscious about the such provisions should not be as a tool of harassment. These are a testing time, because if these provisions are under these provision notice will be issued, you have to challenge those provisions only, because otherwise this provision is so wide and it can create a lot of problem for the assessing. Another is the most important provisions for the enforcement by the taxpayer is the provisional attachment. If you read this section of provisional attachment, this section 83 says if the proceeding is pending under a particular provision 62, 63, 64, 67, 73, and 74. But what in real life is happening with the Gujarat High Court particularly leading in such kind of cases where the proceeding is initiated against a company, but the attachment of the bank account of the directors were attached. The court come down heavily. Directors are independent than a company. You can't attach a bank director's personal accounts when the proceeding is against a company. Similarly, when the search is conducted and the search is over and you have officers has concluded the search, went back their office, then the Gujarat High Court said no proceeding can be said to be pending under this section. If it is not pending, then you cannot attach the bank account. Therefore, the Gujarat High Court in this judgment has given a detailed guideline, one can read it. Therefore, what is in nowadays, suppose by making an allegations, officers today attach the bank account. Already there is a fund flow shortage, the business is already down, and in such a case, if such enforcement provisions being used by the officers and which have been used since the introduction of the GST, the government should come out very clearly what steps the government has taken after so many judgments, so many observation of the High Court has come. These provisions are being misused. What steps has been taken by the government to ensure that in future such harassment does not take place? Because otherwise the GST law will be a painful law for all the taxpayers, and there will not be an end of litigations. Because my firm belief is that GST law can said to be successful if the litigation drastically come down. Because once you have an e-tax and after e-tax your litigation is increasing, that is a worrisome situation that should not have happened. Now you see overlapping jurisdiction under GST law also. In overlapping jurisdiction, is very important. Just before the lockdown, we have taken a few cases where you see first this circular issued by the GST Council. GST Council in this circular has clearly noted that either there would be a jurisdiction of the state tax officer or the center tax officer against one assessee to ensure that there is a single interface. Because the GST law, half tax goes to the state kitty, half to the center kitty. The both are the stakeholder. But the government has taken a conscious decision. Tax officer will be divided, tax assessee will be divided, certain will be given power to the central tax officers, the Union of India officers, those who will have the power over them, and certain assessee will be under the state jurisdiction. Now the question arises, those who are under the state jurisdiction, whether the central tax officer can come and examine the records and initiate a proceeding, or vice versa, where the assessee of the state tax officers can come with the central tax officers has been assigned the jurisdiction. My answer will be no, but in real life it is happening. That's why the two judgments are very important of the Supreme Court in the Punjab and Haryana High Court, where it has been stated that even if there is a concurrent jurisdiction, those you can see under section 6 of the GST law. But those officers who has exercised the first jurisdiction, other has to absent from exercising the jurisdiction. Both cannot simultaneously exercise the jurisdiction. But in real life, what is happening? The one letter come, one notice come from the central tax officer to the same very assessee for the same very period. Another notice come from the state tax officers. That goes against the very decision taken by the GST Council in that circular, which is issued with the presence of all stakeholders, both the center, state, and union territory officers and the Ministry of Finance are sitting. Then why these are not being followed? The second thing is that as we have seen in the beginning, DGGI, preventive department, audit department, their divisions, they have the various departments. They are all working under the GST law. What is happening for the same very period, audits are being conducted or verification is being done. Then the other department like the DGI will also issue a letter or the summons to the same very SSC for the same very period and try to exercise the jurisdiction. The question arises, can there will be overlapping jurisdiction over the same SSC and the tax department can multiple time exercise the jurisdiction? Answer is no. These two judgments both I found before the Delhi High Court, you can see, where the Delhi High Court in ebis.com clearly wrote DGCI has sought to reassess the tax liability of the EVs for a past period without resorting to any known procedure of the law. Because here they recorded that the already investigation and audit was done under Rule 5A and which was having no lesser scope. Therefore, you cannot again come and investigate by making an allegations. Such assessment has already been completed. You can't have a power of reassessment. Similarly, para 32 of the NBCC judgment, you also read it, where also the DGGI tried to take a stand that the audit is different, a periodical check, but investigations are done by the DGGI and these are the different, but the High Court rejected that contention. They said the audit proceedings under Rule 5A, which is now under Section 65 of the GST law, or the investigation by the DGGI, it has both the same scope. You cannot undermine one against another. Therefore, there cannot be multiple jurisdictions. The government this time, when the COVID-19 period and is going to be continue for 2 years, the industry is going to suffer because of this economic slowdown. Then in such a situation, government should ensure to remove the pain of the taxpayers. No multiple jurisdictions is exercised. It is not the question that you can go to the court and get a relief. At first place, the government should ensure that their officers should not exercise multiple time jurisdiction against the same very SSC, so that there would be lesser burden, lesser pain, and these enforcement proceedings, are taking place only against the hardcore tax evaders. Then probably we can sail through this tough time, and the GST law probably will be more successful. Now, let's see the next topics in the next 15-20 minutes, because the time is little short and we have to give the certain time for the question answer also. That second topic we have deliberately chosen that the input tax credit in furtherance of business is the reality or is a myth. In fact, it is not a reality. If we read the section 16 or 17, it appears that in GST, whenever we purchase any goods or services in the course or furtherance of the business, the credit will be available. But in reality, it is not so. If the government wanted to make real this law, that any goods or services which are for the furtherance of business and commerce, then no other embargo, no other conditions should have been put, because it encompasses every other condition, because onus is on the assessee to prove that the credit he has taken for the purchase of goods or services for the furtherance of business or commerce. But the kind of condition which have been put into the law, and particularly the new rule 36(4) and 86A, which has been created, that has created more burden. Therefore, let's briefly discuss that why it is a testing time. Because if the GST concept is the value-added tax, that means whatever purchase I have made, whatever tax I have suffered on that purchase, the credit straightway should be allowed. There should not be an infinite condition for availment of that credit, because otherwise what we feel that on one count or the other count, officers can deny me the credit despite I purchase the goods or services for the furtherance of business and commerce. Therefore, let's see how it could be painful and why it could be a testing time under the GST law. Let's first see the section 16(4) of the GST law. It's clearly said that you have to make the payment to the supplier for the goods and services within 180 days from the date of the invoice. Now you see a situation. We are passing through a bad phase. For the almost 3 months, there is no business. Business activity has resumed very at municipal level. And in such a situation, if suppose one manufacturer is ready to supply me the goods and agreed to give me the credit for 2 years, he is allowing me to make the payment against that purchases after 2 years. But if I take a credit of 2 years from my suppliers, then there is an embargo under the GST law. I will not be eligible to take the credit unless I make the payment. Therefore, today, let's say I purchase a laptop, and I'm a dealer in the electronic goods, and I purchase a laptop from a manufacturer for 1 lakh, and I want to sell it for 1,10,000. And whatever GST I have suffered on this purchase goods, if this credit will not be allowed to me because I have taken a credit of 2 years from my supplier, then how I will be able to sell it for 1,10,000? Because if my cash flow is not there, my credit will not be available. Such kind of situation has arisen because of the law which was drafted at the beginning was very bad, and on this count, and this has no justification, because if whether credit is being given, whether the payment is not being made 180 days, it is between the buyer and seller. If the government officer finds something in unusually such kind of transaction, he can examine those things. But putting such condition is against, particularly in such a time period when we are passing through, when there is already, government has recognized. That's why the government has announced that there will be cheaper credit will be available, easy loan will be available. They have reduced, the TDS rate. They have asked you waiver the penalties, reduce the interest rate under GST law for certain taxpayer, even waive the interest at all. In such situation, you want to create more funds in the hands of the taxpayers because there is a cash flow shortage. But on the other hand, such kind of condition you put in the law for taking credit, that will go against the very concept of the GST law, because GST law mandate is a value-added tax. Therefore, if I purchase a laptop at 1 lakh and I sell it for 1,10,000, I have to pay the GST only on 10,000 rupees. But if my credit will not be available to me at all of 1 lakh purchases I have made, then how I will be able, pay the taxes? That means I have to pay the tax on the entire amount from my own pocket. And then again, it will be a cash flow shortage. Therefore, the government has to support the businessman. By removing such kind of provision from the law. Now you see other conditions which they are put under this. And the one is very significant because it says C condition under section 16(2). The tax charge in respect of such supply has been actually paid to the government either in cash or through utilization of input tax credit admissible in respect of said supply. What they are saying, if I purchase a laptop, now let's assume the transaction I did not purchase in credit, I purchased in cash, I paid it to the manufacturer, and manufacturer did not deposit the tax amount in the government account. They said you will not be entitled to credit. Government has not made any law to empower the purchaser to exercise any power over the vendor or the manufacturer. How I will ensure him he pay the tax? If he doesn't pay the tax, the government officer can initiate the proceeding against that person. But why they are interested? My credit should be denied. Therefore, such law which they have made it. Why this is testing time, you see? Because there was already precedence. Similar provision they made it under the VAT law, and Punjab Haryana High Court and Delhi High Court came down heavily against such law. And you see this slide, and at the bottom in paragraph 5 there are 2 judgments are quoted. They said provision made under such VAT law to denying the credit on the condition that the vendor has not deposited the tax is quite burdensome, And that provision has to be interpreted in a manner that unless there is a connivance established by the officers between the buyer and seller, such credit cannot be denied. If the seller has not deposited the tax, you can take the proceeding against the seller and you can't touch the buyer at all. Despite these judgments available before the introduction of the GST law, the government has not learned the lesson. They put against this condition under the GST law. Therefore, it is a testing time. Because if very concept of the GST is being mitigated or violated or breached, then the business cannot be run because the GST law has impact all through. It is an indirect tax. It will affect everybody, every buyer. It will not see the difference between rich and poor, where the direct tax is the directly come from the income. Here, if the selling dealer, to the ultimate consumer will not be entitled to take a credit on XYZ conditions, which to my mind is not a rightful way of putting the condition at all. Because if such conditions are put, then if the credit is not available, the credit may be available once the ultimate payment is made, but that may be a time lag. My business by the time will suffer a lot and I have to close down such business. Therefore, one has to see these conditions, which is proper or not. Let's see the two rules which they introduced. One is the rule 36 sub rule 4, where there is a condition. Earlier there was a 20%, now there is a 10% of the eligible credit available in respect of the invoices which is uploaded. Suppose as I purchaser, you know all these things, why I am interpreting this problem in a different way. That if my selling dealer has uploaded 10 invoices, but he did not upload 2 invoices, they said in respect of the not uploaded invoice, my credit will be restricted to the 10% of the uploaded, my input tax credit. Why such a restriction is made? Is this restriction is not against the section 16(2) itself? Why such extraordinary condition has been put? That's why I made certain observation that such rule which has been made is contrary to the section 16(2), which is drafted by the parliament. Secondly, in this rule, the return they are referring to the GST advance. Return is being referred to the 3B return or the GSTR 3 return. Therefore, one has to see the value. Such a burdensome condition they have put it. And lastly, we have to see, very interesting, this rule. This rule is quite interesting in the sense, the manner in which it has been drafted. Section 80, Rule 86A, putting a condition for blocking of the credit. And this credit will be blocked up to 1 year. When this credit will be blocked, kindly see. It says the commissioner or the officer not below the rank of the assistant commissioner having reason to believe that input tax credit available in the electronic tax ledger has been fraudulently availed. This term is very important. Let's assume there is an allegation by the department that I have availed the credit fraudulently. Then this rule has made out a separate set of procedure and they want to block your credit. Whereas the law under section 73 is little different. Law under section 73 says, if there is an allegation, somebody has taken a fraudulent credit or utilized the credit fraudulently, then a notice under section 73 or 74 has to be issued. And then assessee will reply to that. Then only confirmation of the demand will arise. But instead of following that procedure, it says, if such situation arises, then the credit will be blocked. And what essentially the officers, I've been told, are doing in these cases, they are comparing one two-way return, which is auto-generated probably on the portal, with your GSTR 1 return. And if it does not match, they just give you a notice or they block your credit. No hearing is given, no reason is being stated. So that is quite, burdensome law, and that is purely and clearly against the law made by the parliament under various provisions given under the GST Act itself. Another thing is which is stated that such thing could be done when they found that that credit has been taken without receipt of goods or services, or they are saying the invoice you on under strength of which you purchase the your vendor does not exist at that places. Now take the example, suppose I purchased something a year back and today officer went to that place, they found that that from today does not exist and they are not carrying out any business. How they can block my credit? Would it be justified? Can I ensure that my vendor remain at that premises throughout the lifetime? He may want to close down his business. There may be XY reason. He may would have shifted his business. Therefore, such kind of condition they are putting, condition under section 62 already quite burdensome. Putting another condition in such a case will not be, assessee will not be able to tolerate it. And I believe I covered both the topics in such a fashion that we can understand and to conclude in such a manner that the GST law, when introduced in 2017, only passed through a very rough weather. Government has seen their portal was not working. Assessee has faced lot of problem even for filing return, etc. Every time dates were extended. Even the waiver of the penalty has come many times by the government. If the system is new, instead of making it quite cumbersome, putting lot many conditions, the government should strengthen this law through the channel only and giving less power in the physical hands to the officers and making the rules which is apparently contrary to the act. Then again, you are not winning the trust of the taxpayers. It has been said that in India, once a litigation starts, it becomes a never-ending process. Even if you won the case at one level, the government filed the appeal at the next level. Even though present government has taken a very drastic steps, putting the monetary limit up to below that level, the government should not file the appeal at all. But despite that, the litigation is reaching at the peak level. Therefore, in such a situation, the government should be very serious. And the point which has been made in this presentation and the manner in which the officer are conducting notice, one should take care for that. This I have already read the very recent decision where the in Team HR decision Delhi High Court on 10th June 2020 held that the GST department indulged in the frivolous litigation. So what would be happening? I used the two quote, one from Mahatma Gandhi and one from Gita before I conclude my talk. There is a higher court than the court of justice, that is the court of conscientiousness, which supersedes all the courts. You might have heard many times, even the officer said, once they abuse their power, you go to the court. It is not a question of court. We cannot overburden the court every time. It is the duty of the, the government of India and the GST, those who are monitoring and implementing the GST law, including the state government, to ensure that what is their conscientiousness is saying. They have to examine the conduct of their own officers also time to time and strengthen them. If their powers are not being misused, I have already read so many judgments how the powers are being misused. Therefore, your consciousness, what is saying that is the perfect law, rather than going by every time to the court, because sometimes the court also make mistakes and may not be the judgment favorable to you. Second is what the Bhagavad Gita said, what a great man does is followed by other. People go by the example he sets. Therefore, the Ministry of Finance, Finance Ministers and Prime Ministers, they are become the role model for the country. They should set an example, like they have changed the law, GST law many times whenever the representation is made. They should ensure that their implementation through the enforcement provisions is not unnecessary harassment to the taxpayers, and smaller mistake, etc. Such summons should not have been issued. And at the same time, the credit should be allowed in a seamless manner, as it was said before introduction of the GST, rather than putting one after another under another condition, because that is going to be proved to be a trap. Anytime the officer can trap to the assessee and indulge in the unnecessary litigation. If there are enough proof is available that goods was purchased and it was for furtherance of business. Only on this ground, the credit should be allowed rather than putting other conditions. Thank you very much, my dear friends. Now the floor is open for the question answer. I'm handing over the mic Mr. Vinas, our Director of Committee of Indirect Taxes in the Association. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for very both the aspects. And now the house is open for the question answers, and I would request the attendees to now unmute themselves and ask the question to the to Shri Ji Ki Mittal.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sir, if I am a supplier of services,
Yes.
client buys some goods directly from a goods producer and they are directly billed to him. But payment is routed through me. Do I have any GST liability?
No, your question is not clear. Such kind of questions, one need to more facts. Once, goods are being supplied, why the only payment to be routed through you? It
Sir,
cannot be,
because
once a while it can be, one can explain that, but why the payment route would be different than the, the supply route?
sir, the company is doing a incentive program and they have dealers all over the country. So to coordinate that each dealer gets the payment, gets the incentive, they route the payment through me. And there are multiple suppliers.
I will not give the straightway answer to these questions. One has to examine the detailed facts because it is going to be huge litigations. I don't want to put you on like that, no, like this. If there is an agreement, one has to examine it because there should not be if the supply is not by you indirectly, directly you are saying is not there, then of course the GST burden will not come on you at all. But it appears to me somehow once the payment is routed through you how you have recorded the transaction in your books of accounts, how you have shown it is if the goods certain defects are there, who shall be responsible the burden. These probably the questions should be answered before we reaching and jumping to the conclusion whether the GST liability will arise on the dealer or not.
So can I meet you? Can I take appointment in your office?
Yes, you can take the appointment and then you can discuss it.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, there are multiple advance rulings starting from Sanofi, Biostat, Moksha Agarbatti, and Sufra courts, which are disallowing input tax credit on the items given as free incentive to the trade or the trade partners. Sir, would like to take your views on those advance rulings. Are they legally correct? Because these trade incentives are not a gift. There is a quid pro quo.
I will answer to your query in this way. First thing, we have to understand the concept of the advance ruling. It does not extend beyond the party who has approached to the advance ruling authority. Therefore, why the problem has arisen? Advance ruling authority gives the decision, and these decisions are taken as a precedence, like a Supreme Court decision, and read thoroughly. That's why this problem has arisen. Whereas this decision has no applicability on anyone other than the person who has approached it. Secondly, very recently, probably a couple of days back, you have seen against one advance ruling authority, Ministry of Finance has issued one circular clarifying whether the director remuneration will be liable to GST or not. And there was an advance ruling from the Karnataka and Rajasthan like this, because advance ruling was against the law itself. The thirdly, to your question, that advance ruling authority is headed by the level of the joint commissioner only. And when you give a task of the judicial interpretations, which is to be done by the High Court and Supreme Court level to the junior level officers who has no experience on this at all, because the advance ruling is a totally different concept. It was there in the past when it was headed by the judicial officers of the High Court and Supreme Court judge. Therefore, the quality of those judgments can never be appreciated. And I personally never read these advance ruling, because I answer in this way: if you can tolerate the anchor of the TV channels every day, and you can tolerate this advance ruling. So I don't watch TV, I don't see the advance ruling. Now, straightway answer to your questions. If you read, probably the section 17 is there of the valuation rule, where the certain discounted, etc., have been given that no GST shall be applicable if it is reflected in the invoice, bill, etc. Very recently, a judgment of Supreme Court was, there, and in Supreme Court, in that judgment, though it was not for the GST, it was the other taxation law. They said when there is a trade practice is there, you have to take into account that trade practice. Every time a discount can never be reflected in the bill at all. Incentive are being given is in the nature of generally because you are making the more sale, etc. And these are generally, I found, like in the motor car dealer, which I am conducting, so many cases where the discounts are being given and which are termed as an incentive. It cannot be subjected to tax, to my mind. Therefore, I have not gone through this advance ruling authority. You can address to us very specific case which can be examined, but don't go by advance ruling authority decision at all. It has no impact so far as your business is concerned. You should take your independent view. Next, please.
Mr. Rohit Mishra, you can ask your question.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello. Sir, myself Rohit Mishra.
Yes.
I have a question on it. If I provide a service to outside India, where is my customer is situated, but the service on renting of immovable property, the property is within India, should I pay the tax on IGST on forward charge or RCN?
You are a service provider.
Yes, on renting of immovable property.
Reverse charge, to my mind, applicable in your context once you have received the services. If a service provider located in India,
yes,
the question of reverse charge will not arise. So why this question has come in your mind about the reverse charge, I don't understand.
Because the where I service provide, the situation of my customer is outside India.
No. Then whether service GST will be applicable or not, that is a different question.
Yeah.
You have presumed that the GST is applicable in this case. Only question you are putting whether it should be forward charge. Reverse charge, the notification number 10 is there in the IGST. Only there are certain circumstances are narrated out where the reverse charge is applicable. And so far as the person who is located outside India, one party and one is in India, then the reverse charge will be applicable only when the service recipient is in India and the service provider outside India. If service provider is in India, under which entry you want to foresee this situation, the reverse charge will be applicable. It has to be a forward charge only.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, one more question.
Yes.
If I receive a foreign commission from outside India.
Yes.
Okay. In USD, should I pay the under RCM and claim in the next month, because there is no bill of entry or other documents of the that commission?
Bill of entry only will come when
only the goods.
Once you are taking a commission, there is no question of bill of entry.
Bill of entry.
And you pay on the reverse charge. Let me make it clear. I am not commenting upon that whether the GST itself will be applicable in your previous transaction or in this transaction, because you presuppose that the GST is applicable. Only question is that whether in this second question, whether it can be paid on reverse charge, yes, and you can take the credit.
Okay.
Thank you. Doubt in your mind, I do not know. It is a very clear, your facts is very clear, then there should not have any doubt.
Okay, sir.
Next, please.
Next question, please.
Sir, I have a question regarding the eligibility of ITC on CSR expenditure. there's an advance ruling. There's an advance ruling by the AR of Chennai where they state that you cannot take ITC on goods that you've donated under CSR because they will be covered in Section 17(5) under gifts. But CSR being mandated by the Companies Act on companies exceeding a threshold limit of turnover or profit, it is not a gift because it is not voluntary. It is mandated by Companies Act. So what would be the eligibility of ITC?
I don't agree with the advance ruling reasoning because as you told me that they are treating as a gift. CSR is not a gift. It is a mandatory expenditure. But what I understand under the Companies Act, it is, after the profit line. That means after, the profit is calculated, thereafter the 2% amount you have to allocate to spend that money. And this question has arisen when I was addressing, 4 months before lockdown, a seminar in Kolkata on the CSR itself, whether CSR is being treated as a business expenditure or not. That will be the question. And to, if I examine from the Companies Act point of view, it will not be treated as a business expenditure probably because it is after the profit, you compute it. But if you read the section 16 of the GST law, whatever purchasing you are making for the furtherance of business, then the credit is available. Therefore, if you take a credit, because this question has come first time to me about the CSR for taking credit, and no pastly I have not examined it. It appears that because the Supreme Court decisions are saying the other law cannot be considered for the purpose of one law. So CGST law we have to read independently. It clearly states for the furtherance of business, whatever purchasing you are making, then credit will be available. Only thing we have to satisfy that it was for the furtherance of business once the mandatory condition has been put. Prima facie appears to me that at this stage we are eligible to take credit because 17(5), which the advanced ruling authority has said, the decision which you referred, it is a gift. I don't treat it as a gift because the gift is totally different. Gifts are the voluntary things. You give it out of love and affections. These are not the voluntary things. These are mandatory, mandated. And without that, you are unable to conduct your business. You will put to the penalty also. You see, there was a prosecution under the Companies Act if you don't spend that money also. Therefore, these are the mandatory things and you are eligible to credit under section 16(2).
Next question, please.
Yeah, I have one more question regarding the concept of cross. There's an advance ruling wherein it has been said that even employees working at a head office that provides support services to its branches, their salary has to be apportioned to the branches. Whereas as per GST law, the service by employees to their employer is covered in the negative list. So it's an exempt supply. So would that salary component be included in the cross charge? And secondly, as per the valuation rules, when there's a transaction between two distinct persons, the same entity operating in different states, where the second entity is entitled to full ITC on the bill, they can use any nominal value. So would any nominal value be suffice for the concept of cross charge?
If you refer to the rule, they clearly said if you are eligible for the credit, then any transaction value you can put. That is the shortcut way of understanding this problem. The problem is bigger there. The problem is bigger how one employee, salary could be apportioned. That means you are saying one can render the services to oneself. One can argue that these are two distinct entities registered under the GST law. But that is not the purpose for distinct entity. One will employ, as you rightly said, it is not an exempt service. It is not a service at all. It does not come under the GST law Schedule 3. It is clearly outs the entire transaction from the GST law. Therefore, once the salary itself is out, how it can be treated as a taxable entity? My understanding is totally different. Though I was told in SHM also we had discussed, one point of time in our committee meeting also. Most of the view was that let's approach to the government to ease it and to formulate certain principle. My personal view is that let ask to the government under which provision of the law it will be taxable. Under the taxation law, the two Supreme Court judgment I have quoted, one is Mathuram Agarwal and Govind Saran. Taxation law is not like that. You can read my slides clearly. Every components are clearly defined. Which transaction is tax is applicable, why the tax is applicable, law should be there. It is like, to my understanding, it is a presumption. And if this law is allowed to be, worked out in this fashion, GST is going to be mess. For example, you take an example of a consultant. He has a 4 office in the 4 different states, Mumbai, Calcutta, Chennai, and Delhi. And one run business throughout, then one employee move to the another, even owner move from one place to another every day. It is the one entity for this purpose. One employee is there. That cannot be bifurcated. My body cannot be cut and pieces into 4 parts. Therefore, and second question, government should answer in which part of the world such kind of transaction is being taxed, assuming that it is a transaction. It is not a supply at all. If my officer sitting at Delhi, like take the example of the SOCHM, we have the offices in here, and let's say our office is in Punjab or in Kolkata. One officer today went to the Calcutta and come back in the evening. His salary to be proportional to that place also. How the two body cannot be separated. These are one and same thing. Distinct entities for the different purpose. I have a totally different view. I can just only give an example. In the service tax era, similar kind of situation arises in a different fashion in 2003, where the question arises whether the secondment of the employee, the salary will be taxable or not. We said it cannot be taxable. Like 4 friends today for hire a taxi one place to another place, and the total fare came 1,000. One person has paid, and other person said we will transfer through PTM your share, 250 rupees each. Then can it be treated as I render a service for 250 to all 3 my friend? Service was rendered by that taxi wala. He charged 1,000 rupees. He charged GST, etc. Whatever may be. Therefore, tax law cannot be presumed or assumed something. It should be clearly spelled out. If they want to tax it, the question you have put it, probably by hearsay because of this advance ruling. I put it in different way. Let's read the GST law and point out under the GST law which section covers this transaction to be taxable. Whether section 9, which is a chargeable section, whether it is covering there, or which provision of the law which is covered there. To my mind, this transaction is not taxable at all.
Next question is from Mr. Paras Jain.
Hello.
Yes, Jan
Sir, Mitra sir, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation on this unique subject of summon, seizures, arrest. Really, you are the master of these provisions of the law. Really, it's wonderful to hear you. Sir, so in this direction, just I will give an example of our case where we on one day, on 10th of February, we were shocked to find a debit in our electronic credit ledger of crores of rupees. And when we approached the jurisdictional commissioner, surprised that they were not aware about it. Finally, then we made the presentation to the representation to the government, met the Yogendra commissioner. He assured that I will do something, but so far nothing has been done. So, how suddenly some government officer debits to our this electronic ledger, issuing no shock cause notice, no letter, no information. So it's surprising and very painful also. So
yes,
please,
yes. Highlight it. In fact, whenever such kind of cases come to my lab, it depends upon the assessee aggression. I will suggest immediately you approach to the court, because the officers does not give any remedy at all. Because under the law, it is the duty of the officers. They have to explain their conduct, under which provision of the law they can debit the huge amount in your account. The law does not permit to do so. As you rightly said, there has to be show cause notice. There has to be some reasons. They have not explained it. As soon as you will approach to the court, they will try to defend their illegal action for some times. but you will ultimately get a relief. Once the amount is in crores of rupees, your business is definitely, I'm sure, is severely adversely affecting, because same amount you have to pay from your own pocket then, and I do not know, then your tax liability is of the same amount. How they can debit it? Once they said that we are not aware of that, had you made a written communication also with any one of them?
Yeah. We have written to the commissioner, jurisdictional commissioner, and also to the principal commissioner, Mr. Yogendra Garg. And we met him personally when there was no lockdown at that point of time, and explained it. Fortunately, like, we are not required to pay the taxes because of that exemption available for the road construction projects on the annuity part. So because of that, that the tax liability somehow is not presently coming, but after we'll be in a difficult position if it is not sorted out immediately. So what you are suggesting, that the court is only the remedy available if the government is not responding in such manner?
100%. In fact, I am surprised why you have not explored the possibility of approaching to the court. These cases are fit to be interfered by the court only. It is not the question of that you are asking some interpretation provision. How somebody can take away the money? In fact, I would have been personally affected. I would have lost the FIR in this case by the time. Because taking away my money is a serious offense under the IPC Act. One has to give the reason. In fact, you read that judgment of the Gujarat High Court, which I quoted in this slide, where the search was conducted and many officers sat in and slept even in the house of that person. And in that, the certain observation has been made. Government officers are not excused under section 155 or so of the GST law. Even action can be taken against those officers because they are acting beyond their authority of the law. So taking away such a money and debiting your account is taking away, like, suppose today you have a bank account and somebody take away the money of 5 lakh rupees to your bank account, what you will do? You will go to the bank, and bank is not taking any responsibility. You will go to the economic offense wing of the police and register an FIR. They have to find out. Therefore, they are supposed to reply, and how this money has taken away. It is a question of a big businessman like your company. That's why I'm quite worrisome in this topic, is that they don't spare even a big company or a small company. They don't spare and make a distinction between poor and rich, and they harass equally even the public sector companies also.
Correct. So what the right is temporary blocking of credit. So that is what the mention it. And
the blocking of credit, I already read under this rule 86A. Then you approach to the court. Blocking of the credit also they are supposed to, because it says that once you have a reason to believe. What you have answered to me, they said we do not know. How they can answer we do not know? Because the blocking of credit, certain procedure has been spelled out. First, there has to be reason to believe, and reason to believe on the basis of the certain documents. And then, even if the blocking of credit they give in writing, you can challenge even those very provisions also. Because that provision says if you fraudulently take the credit, then only these steps could be taken. And read with the section 73 and 74, they are supposed to give you a notice. Otherwise, no remedy will come. 1 year, till 1 year, they will block it. After that, what they will do it? Then would it become a non-fraudulent? If it is a fraudulent from the beginning, it will remain fraudulent for the entire life, is it not?
Sure.
Therefore, we have to approach to the court in this case.
Okay,
so
sure.
You will examine it, you will find the remedy in a correct way and very speedy remedy. It is not a lengthy proceeding in such cases.
Okay, fine.
In fact, in Gujarat High Court, if one of our client, their ship was stopped at the sea only, they were not allowing it to come to the port. And in 11 o'clock in the night, a phone call came. We drafted the petition at 12 o'clock. I reached the, in early morning flight, Gujarat High Court. And by the time my junior mentioned it before the judge and petition was at 2 o'clock, by 3 o'clock, judge makes sure that either you release that vessel immediately or the 10 lakh rupees per day, I will take it from the commissioner pocket. And he given in writing that, okay, I am releasing it. So such a cases are not a long cases ki you can wait for years together, because otherwise you can't conduct a business. Even judges ask you can stop a vessel in the sea itself. Are you mad? It has to come to the court first, is it not? So your
Correct.
case is very good.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Amit Bhatt, next question.
Sir, I have received notice about the recovery of inadmissible credit due to I have filed GSTR 3B return March 19 in 25th October 2019.
Okay.
Sir, my query is how is inadmissible credit due to I have
Under
25th and
which
5 days
provision?
late.
On which provision they are saying inadmissible credit?
16.4.
If 16.4 was there, if you don't make the payment 180 days, or it is like that you file your return up to September of the next year.
September. Yes.
If you have not filed the return, my examination is that you will be entitled to take the credit. If those who have filed the return and they missed it out for taking credit, that provision will be applicable to those people only. Because if you have not filed the return, to my understanding, I have examined this issue in detail. That means you have taken a credit in your books of accounts. Only return filing is delayed.
Yes.
To my mind, you are out of that provisions. You can fight this case.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Yes, please.
Hello. Regarding late payment of tax on the Gova. We have a question on late filing of the GSTR 3B returns. Government, High Court of Gujarat put a stay on the recovery by that was a 46,000 crores across India. First point is we want to know what was the status of that decision. What is the present? What is the outcome of that? Is there any further directions by the High Court?
Can you repeat the first two sentences of your question, because there was a lot of noise? I couldn't hear you. The question is late payment because of the late filing of return, interest liability or something else?
Yes. Late filing of GSTR 3B returns and the consequent interest liability.
On the gross amount or only on the tax amount you are asking?
Actually, we have made the payment through online challan payment. Would we delayed in filing the returns?
Delay in filing the return, no interest liability will arise if the tax payment has been made on due time, including the input tax credit. What the department was doing before lockdown, even the CBIC chairman issued a letter to all the commissioner. Those who have late filed the return, you recover the interest on the gross amount, including the input tax credit. That is totally illegal. Delhi High Court in the lifestyle case, which I am leading in that case, has already given the interim relief. Telangana High Court, which has given the earlier adverse decision, which Mr. Paras Jain once, discussed it in Mumbai conference, that decision is also put on hold because the review petition was filed. Review petition has been accepted and notice was issued. And Telangana High Court also said in interim relief, no coercive measures shall be taken. That interest can be recovered on the gross amount at all because it is against the provision of Section 50 itself. Section 50 says interest shall be payable only on that part which you have not paid on time. It does not say late filing of return will entail for interest liability at all. Final judgment has not come because Delhi High Court lockdown started. It was put for hearing in the March. Final hearing has not taken place. Interest liability will not come on the gross amount at all.
But as per the GST provisions, the payment of tax is to be considered when the return is filed. That is the main query.
No, nobody can write the earth like that. Return is filed. If today I paid the tax.
Our practical issue is like this. We have monthly paid our GST liability on the portal, but we were not having the GSTR1 information at time. and we filed the returns after 6, 7, 8 months. Government says,
your
as per the
interest
provision, the
liability
GST
will
provision,
not, if you have
payment
any,
will be considered when return is filed.
No, section 50, you read it. Today in presentation, we have not, I have conducted many webinar in the last 2 months on this particular provision for 1 hour, each time. If there would be a demand, I can request the, Avinash to conduct another webinar in which we can cover this part also. And so far as your question is concerned, if you have paid the tax on time through the portal, interest liability will not arise even if 6 month delay in filing of return, or even if you have not filed the return at all. Interest liability is
authorities have issued notice to us for the interest demand.
Then you have to fight it out. That's why I said you read the lifestyle decision, lifestyle and interim order, you will come to know. Delhi High Court landmark lifestyle interim order of May 2019. If still you have a problem, you can take consultancy, you can contact to our office. But what you are understanding is only because of that the department is issuing notice, and department will issue the notice because the CBIC chairman himself wrote a letter to every chief commissioner and commissioner that his understanding was totally wrong. It is not as per law. You read section 50 and then you can again put a question to me. In the meantime, other can take a chance, because section 50 does not put a you have not filed the return, interest liability arises. Section 50 is very clear.
Yes. Secondly, our argument, this is our stand, that when indirect taxes were subsumed in GST under other laws, say service tax, VAT, whenever a challan payment is made, it's presumed that payment has been made, irrespective of the fact whether the return is filed at a later date.
Same position is in the GST
take the same plea also?
Same position is in GST law. This mess has arisen because in our country what happened, once a senior government officer, including the chairman of the CBIC, is not reading the law, and I just read one of the judgment of Delhi High Court. One cannot rubber stamp the opinion of the other one. I can challenge the CBIC chairman who issued that letter to all the officers. He would not have aware of what is the section 50 about the interest liability. He just sign a file and he just issue a letter. He feel like that more cases he will make and more popular he will become. That is the funda of this country, which is very unfortunate. We should have if you have paid the tax lawfully, you paid the tax. Who can recover the tax? You read my decision of the 10th June 2020 only. I just put the last slide before you. You can see that. That judgment, what happened? The 2 crore 83 lakhs, they were refusing to refund. And ultimately, High Court put a penalty on that also. If money you deposit, where that money has gone then? If you have to pay the interest, you should have kept in your pocket then. Why you paid it? After making the payment to the government, still you have to pay the interest. That can never be a situation anywhere in the world. I am very clear. I have made a detailed analysis of that. If you have a problem, you can take a legal opinion. You can discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ronak.
Yeah. Hello, sir. I had a question relating to reverse charge mechanism. So, if there was import of service in the year 2017-18 and it was overlooked during the GST audit also, now the client wants to pay the RCM payment. So, will it be able to take the credit ITC of the RCM payment?
I think so. There is, I can't remember the provision offhand. Section 16, I think there is some embargo and some condition has been put, limitation or something on this count. You just send me the email, I will just reply to it. I don't want to answer, which is not precise. And your question I've understood, just mail it and today itself you will get the reply.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Sir, what is your practical advice for small dealer or medium type of dealer where you have to face the DGCI or like department, where you know how they are working and threatening and other things are there. In such circumstances, what a normal people or small dealers should
Please
take
go
this
a
step?
little slow. Your voice is,
Sorry,
a
sir.
little slow so that I can
Yeah.
hear you because your voice is echoing something.
Okay, sir. Sorry, sir. What is your practical advice for small or medium dealer who cannot afford to go for litigation with higher authorities, with the court, and there they have to face the department, DGCR or like audit or any other where they are threatening or they are doing so many pressure on them.
You reply very strongly to their letters, why their proceeding is not correct under the law. And in my experience is that once we take up any matter, large number of matters, only because we write a letters, because of that it does not proceed further. So it happens always in real life, in not only in this taxation law, in any law. Because what I understood with my experience and with the very sorry to those officers, what I understood, most of the officers are corrupt, and those who are corrupt, they have some unknown fear in their minds also. So once you write a letter along with to the senior officers, or sometime you write a letter to the PMO, such files are, they just throw it out. Therefore, you have to take that steps if you can't go to the court. But if you are sitting at home, you will not get any remedy at all. I can share my n number of example since my childhood. Whenever I made a complaint against any officers, he set his house in order, and he was running, including the many IPS officers.
Okay, thank you,
Therefore,
sir.
if you are correct, you just take a steps and you write very bold letters, very precise. Don't write in too lengthy letters, very precise letters. And whenever you make a truthful complaint, 95% chances are there your complaint will be heard at certain level, and at least to give you a relief and not to harass you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Pankaj Bansal.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon.
Thanks for a wonderful session, sir. Sir, my query is I just want to know your views on ITC not allowed, that is expenses incurred for personal consumption, a limitation in section 17, subsection 5.
Your voice is not very clear. You have to be, little clear. If somebody can hear and pass on to me your query, voice is breaking somehow.
Sir, now it is audible.
Yes, now it is very, very clear.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So, sir, I just wanted to have your view on ITC disallowed. That is ineligibility of ITC. That in section 17, subsection 5, it has been mentioned that personal consumption expenses incurred for personal consumption, ITC would not be eligible on that expenses. So there are some expenses like housekeeping charges and some foreign diplomats has been coming in India for the business purpose, and we companies arranging for renting of their premises, and visa charges has been incurred by the company. So is it allowed under a GST Act or it won't allowed? Is it come under personal consumption or we can take it?
My interpretation is that it is not a personal consumption expenditure. These are the business expenditure. Otherwise, interpretation will be given by the court. I can give the example. Suppose the auditor comes today and you house them for 1 week, and you taken a premises on the rent. Can it be a personal expenditure? It is only purely a business expenditures. Personal expenditure is the different in nature. I go for my personal visit, I go for my personal tours. These are otherwise, even if I am traveling outside Delhi, it will be treated as my personal expenditure. So what you have explained me, to my understanding very clearly, these are the business expenditure. These are not the personal expenditure, and whatever the credit is available, subject to the other conditions, you have, ITC eligibility because of this rule, etc., place of supply, and where in which state it will be, you are eligible for credit, full credit. I have no doubt at all. Is it clear? Yes. Have you heard my answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree.
Yes.
Just wanted to know about housekeeping expenses, ITC on housekeeping expenses.
No, housekeeping is totally business expenditures because you can take, it is like that. Suppose you are today maintaining a guest house and certain officers are living there. There will be certain housekeeping expenditure there also. It is, to my mind, it is not a personal nature of expenditures at all. Though one can debate it, there could be a different answer, but once the court will give the interpretation ultimately, and then one would know. I have no doubt. If you come to me, I will advise you. You take a full credit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we have to close the session if anyone have last question.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I have a query regarding that accumulated ITC in my account. Basically, industry's practice is that they are exporting with payment of tax to convert their accumulated ITC into cash. And recently, by a circular, government says that if you have used ITC, then refund will come into your credit ledger only, and you will not get the cash amount. Then how, for example, I am a supplier of service. I am doing export of the services and I was using this. Hello. Yeah, I was using this way out to convert my accumulated ITC into cash. That I was making export of service with payment of tax by using my ITC and then filing the refund and getting the cash. But now I will get the refund in my credit ledger only. And what is the purpose of that?
No. Then there is no refund at all. Credit ledgers is no refund because what I understand, Section 54 is there perhaps in the CGST Act, which allows you to seek the refund. Refund means the cash refund. If any circular has come which is contrary to the section, you have to challenge that circular immediately in the court. I am surprised. I have because I am not a procedural man. I don't read or see the day-to-day procedural things. But if that circular has come, that has to be challenged immediately in the court of law because nobody can issue a circular which is contrary to the law.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, that circular is not applicable to zero-rated supply. So for export of services, you will still get the refunds in cash. That circular only says that if there is an erroneous payment of tax paid via credit, that will not be refunded to you in cash and that will be refunded to you in credit. So in madam's example, they would be getting cash as refund and not in credit.
Thank you for clarification. But even if erroneous refunded, I can't understand. I will see that circular so that, I am more educated because circular still appears to be something wrong. Because if there was a erroneous, credit, how that can be, recredited in the accounts? Erroneous means you have to take a proceeding and recover that amount. But anyway,
erroneous tax payment. The circular says
okay, I understood. If I made an excess payment of tax, that will not be refunded.
Yes.
It will be credited. And that is fair. That is fair then.
Yes.
Then that query was absolutely. No, that circular is then correct. Then circular is correct that your money will be there with then you can use it for the next payment.
Yes, that's the way.
Yes. Next, please.
Next question, please. So I think if there's no further questions, sir, then we can end this session.
Yes.
So on behalf of SHM, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to all the attendees for participating at this session. And I would also like to convey my heartfelt thanks to Shri J.K. Mittal, our co-chairman, for sparing his valuable time and sharing his expertise with the participants. So, as advised by Shri Mittalji, we will be conducting next session soon, and we will inform to you over the email. Thank you, and we will share the presentation over the email with you. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.